we're going through the 10 Commandments. That's what we're going through. And we've gone through the first 3, you know, which is don't have any other gods, don't make any idols, don't take the Lord's name in vain, and remember the Sabbath day. And those first 3 are all about your relationship to you and God. And then the last 7 are about your relationship to you and your neighbor. And the first commandment is kind of the one commandment to kind of rule them all. And that first one is this idea of we break all the other ones because we are more interested in other gods. So we make gods of our own selves or these other things. So we'll kind of further clarify that as we go through. Last week we talked about honor your father and mother. We had some good hot takes about that. And this week we'll have hot takes as well. This week we're discussing 5, 6, and 7, which is don't kill, don't commit adultery, and don't steal. All right, so those are the 3 that we're discussing. Did anyone read those 3 or read ahead in the large catechism yet? So Gloria did. Anyone else? All right. So Gloria will be right there with me with the hot takes. And there's some Luther says some wild stuff about all this in here, and we'll try to get to it. This is what we're doing on Sunday. How I classify these 3 together is don't take your neighbor's things, right? Don't take his life, don't take his spouse, don't take his things, right? Like his actual things. So, and what Luther, I think, the way he describes, and this is what we're talking about on Sunday, it's going to be hard not to do Sunday this week, but is to give. To give, rather than take, give. All right, and I think that's how Luther and that's how Jesus has us understand all of these. So we'll quick look at Exodus chapter. Why are you doing that? We'll look at Exodus chapter 20 just to see these. We're not going to spend a ton of time there. We're going to spend most of our time in Matthew. Hi. Shh. Let's see, what time is it? It's good to see you, Kathy. Let's see, Exodus chapter 20. Chapter 20. And okay, so here we go. So last week we did honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land which your Lord your God is giving you. And I kind of take that your days may be long in the land. I think that applies also to the commandments that are following it also. So it says, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, and you shall not steal. So that's how Exodus renders these next commandments. Next week is you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. I really like that one a lot, but we're not talking about that one today. So you shall not murder. So when you think of you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you should not commit adultery, what comes to your mind? What do your neighbors think of this? What do you think?
The first word that comes to my mind is hate.
Hate? So don't hate?
If you want to hurt someone, even with a mind thing,
yeah,
not physically, but I hope they fall down, or you know, I wish bad things for them. That is murder.
Yeah. So Midget, did you hear Cheryl?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, cool. Good. It's working. It's working. So she says don't hate. Don't hate. And that's good. That's good. It's right along where we're going. But anyone else? Like what do you think? What do you think it means, or what do you think it doesn't mean?
It also deals with abortion.
Abortion.
It also deals with suicide.
Suicide.
And,
now, how are you defining it for suicide?
By
Like that?
taking your own life.
By
By
taking
taking
your
your
own
life. It's not
Okay,
about us
all
to
right.
take it.
All right, cool. I just I wanted you to clarify what we were talking about. Because there's multiple different people that define things.
And on the other side is euthanasia, somebody that,
Yeah. Euthanasia. That's a big one. It doesn't get talked about over here much. We don't practice it too much. We kind of do, but yeah. So you said like abortion, you said euthanasia, suicide. Cheryl said hating. What else?
anything that harms your neighbor.
Anything that harms your neighbor. All right.
It doesn't have to be a physical harm.
Yeah.
We harm more people with our homes.
So Judy is saying there doesn't have to be physical harm. We harm people with our mouths. Yes, yeah.
What about
Bullying. Let's see. So then what about adultery? We're going to kind of lump these together. So what about adultery? What's going on? How would you define adultery, or how would you break that?
It doesn't have to be the physical act, just the thought.
Just a thought. Yeah. We're sticking really close to the gospel right now. Like that's what because that's what we're going to read that here in a second.
We're hurting others to make ourselves feel better.
Hurting others, like in our marriages, or like
the other spouse or girlfriend or whatever.
Okay, yeah. So hurting ourselves to make hurting them,
Others.
or hurting their relationship to make ourselves feel better. Yeah. That's definitely in there. I think gossip gets in there a little bit on that and stuff. Anything else on that one? I think adultery is like, I think in our culture, especially like church culture, I think we understand that one the best. You know, that there aren't any big misconceptions with it. You know, I still think we do it all the time, but we'll probably spend the least amount of time on that one, just because, like, I'm not going to be able to say anything that's not going to mess with anybody, and that's really all I'm about. And then the third one is don't steal. So how would you guys define that? What do you think that one's talking about? What do you think that one's talking about?
It's not taking the pens from the bank, is it?
Do what?
I said, it's not taking the pens from the bank.
Not taking the pens from the bank.
That was supposed to
Is
be.
that stealing?
They always said that. Oh, well, it's not stealing. We're giving you these pens.
Yeah.
Word for word.
Yeah.
That's called advertisement.
Yeah. That's why I always wondered why waiters at restaurants, especially at chain restaurants, why the restaurant doesn't give them advertisements, because if it leaves, who cares? They got chili in it.
Yeah.
You know, like that's like, I don't know. That just never, the fact that, we'll get into tipping here. I got some hot takes on stealing and tipping here in a little bit. So, sure.
In the corporate world especially,
Yeah.
it's where someone takes credit for somebody else's idea.
Okay, so taking credit for someone else's idea. Yeah, and just kind of mention corporate culture there.
Stealing.
We'll probably get into corporate culture a lot. So that's yeah. The what else? What else? What else? How else would define stealing? Luther has an interesting hot take, and we'll read it during that section. And when actually the whole stealing thing, I would say that there are some churches that if I just stood up, we'll even say this, there are Lutheran churches that if I just stood up and read Luther's large catechism on stealing they might tar and feather me for having certain political views. Like that's like that is like I was like, ooh, some hot takes here. Like that's like that I was like that, and that's Luther 500 years ago. And I still think that some of it applies today. And I think when we actually look at it, we're like, yeah, that's right. That's not good. And okay, so, and before we talk about these things, I want to reiterate one big point. And that is, I think that we are guilty of all of these. Like, we are guilty of do not murder. We are guilty of committing adultery, and we're guilty of stealing. I think we're guilty of all of these. I know that may sound weird. Like, oh, I've never killed anybody. Like, we're going to broaden the definition pretty wide, make that net get over it, and you're going to be like, yeah. And I view these 10 commandments are, we really see why we need Jesus, and I think it drives us into confession, where we actually begin confessing our true shortfallings so that we can begin to make things better. So that we can receive absolution, we can receive complete forgiveness from the Lord, but we can also begin to go, all right, well, I can start chipping away at this one, right? So, and I think the stealing one is a big one of those, because it's systemic. It's just systemic theft all over the place. And I think it's just, we have to kind of look at all those things. So, all right, so let's look at this. What I want to read first is we'll do Matthew chapter 5, and we'll go into Matthew chapter 5. Matthew 5. And I'm going to read more than we're actually going to go over that's relevant. We're going to do 1 through, we'll do through 30. No, through 32. So we'll do 1 through 32. And the reason why I want to read this all is that it's setting up, it's the Beatitudes, it's Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and it's setting up what the expectation of the kingdom of God is. And not even just expectation, it's setting up what is the kingdom of God. And we're going to see how that drives all the way through where we start talking about the commandments. Because what you're going to notice is that we're going to get through the expectations of the kingdom, which is the Beatitudes. Then Jesus is going to say, like, I've not come to get rid of the commandments, but to fulfill them. And suddenly he goes in talking about these 3 commandments, right there in the section. So we'll listen to that. Remember, this is the King James version of the Bible that I have here. Well, not the New King James. And if you have a different translation, just kind of read along with it. If you see any big differences in words, let me know after we read it, and because that may provide more clarification. So here we go. Oh, I need to do this.
And seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain. And when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whoever, therefore, breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are on the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge hand you over to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Assuredly, I say to you, you will by no means get out of there till you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery.
There's Jesus with the hot takes there, right? That there, everyone can hear me now. So we see this goes where Jesus starts talking about murder. He says, you've heard it said. You've heard it said that the people long ago, you shall not murder, but anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother and sister will be subject to judgment. And then he kind of continues on with that. Why do you think he says that? I think it makes sense. Does anyone, can anyone else make sense of this before I talk about it? Why is being angry with someone the same thing as murder? Why would Jesus equate those two? What do you think? Anyone have any ideas? Words kill. Now so yours, where does yours say that? In verse?
This is the Message, the
Oh, okay, cool.
contemporary language.
Yeah.
It's the end of 22.
Okay.
The simple moral fact is that words kill.
Words kill. Yeah, they do. So why do they kill though? Like so they hurt us. And why do we use language that would hurt other people? Like why would we hold on to anger about someone? What is the act of that? What is the act of that? Revenge?
Because we're sinners.
It's what, Midge?
Because we're sinners.
Because we're sinners. So Phil just said it's because of revenge. Like, you hurt me, I'll hurt you. Like all that stuff. I think what I think, and this could be wrong. It's not. No, it's not. That's the it's what I think it is it at the very center of it is that hatred is an outpouring of an emotion of, I don't want you around anymore. I don't want you to be near me. I don't want you to be around. I don't want to associate with you, all that stuff. And here's the thing, we'll flesh this more out in the sermon, but it's here, and here's the magic statement that I think we talk about this to this day. When we're really angry at someone, we'll say, you're dead to me. Yeah, right? We have this terminology even today. It's like, you're dead to me. Like and I think that idea is what Jesus is picking up on. That's what Luther picks up on, that we are basically telling people, it's like, get out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And that's when you look at it through that lens, you're like, oh dang, I'm guilty. Like that's really the thing. Let me get you a camera on you.
Look at what happens with family conflicts.
Family conflicts, yeah.
Okay. We're going to cut this child off because, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And now what are we doing?
Yeah. You're just basically throwing them aside.
Throwing them under the bus.
Throwing them under the bus. It's true. It's true. And when you think about it, you're like, oh my goodness. And that's when you start realizing the nuance of all of this. And you're like, oh no. And we can try to weasel out of it, like, oh, but they were treating me bad and all that stuff. And you're like, but you see that, I'll use that word systemic, how like it's just in the system of everything. And I think it goes back to kind of what Midge was talking about, that we're all sinful, that we're all little hate mongering people that are causing each other much difficulty. And that we begin to hurt each other that way.
Angle that you're trying to make yourself better than them, so you throw a name out there that's inappropriate.
So are you guys able to hear Judy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Cheryl can't though. Okay, so is it that you're trying to be better than that person? So that's, you think you are. You think that you're better than that person. You think that they're better than the person. I think that's a big part of it. I really think it, and I introduced this last week, and we'll see that coming along more. I think when we see that person and we hate them, and we're like, oh, well, I'm not going to kill them. I'm not going to plunge the knife into them, right? But I think when we hate them, we've gotten to that point where we no longer feel that we should be a servant to them, which that's why I read the Beatitudes there at the beginning, like, so that's what you're talking about. And so we've already gotten to the point where we don't view that we're being a servant to them anymore, but that we're also saying, God, I'm not happy with how this world has been created and that this person is my neighbor. And I need to fix it. You're dead to me. Get out of my life. Like that. When you start looking at it that way, you're like, ooh, like that. That's and we can do all kinds of weird whataboutisms about like, well, that person was bad to me. That person hurt, and listen. There are times when we have to disassociate ourselves. We tell our kids to do that, right? Like if people are bad influences and stuff like that. But I still think even in those times where there's those bad influences, I still think we're kind of being guilty of this. And that's one of the reasons why I think like the flood narrative with Noah, that there's this story that we kind of tell ourselves that it's like, man, if we could finally just get rid of this group of people, then everything would be okay. And I think the story of Noah is about how that didn't work out. And we see Noah, the one that is righteous, did some heinous sin that destroyed his family when they got off the boat. It's not even just talked about, but the destruction of the family is talked about. So I think when we were like, if I could just get rid of these people, then everything would be righteous and good. I think the story of Noah tells us like, that's not true. That's not true. You still have the flame of sin inside of you, like that's, and so now let's continue on. Let's continue on here. When we're talking about this, we're kind of walking down the path that Luther made for us in the Large Catechism. What happens then when you guys are familiar with the terms? I don't like using them a whole lot, but I feel like they can be used here, like sins of omission and commission. You guys familiar with that? Like sins of where you don't do anything. So it's the way I talk about it with confirmation students is like when you're trotting along there and you see someone that's just drowning and and it's in a pool of water this deep and all you have to do is just reach out and pick them up and stuff like that, and you don't do it. Like that's like, okay, yeah, that's obvious. We have laws on the books in the country, those Good Samaritan laws and stuff like that. But you start compounding that, and you're in a cold weather climate and you see someone without a jacket. Like that's one of those things where it's like it becomes this stuff where it's like, oh, I don't see that like once a year. Like I see it every day on my way to work. That's why I'm using that systemic language. Like it's or we see hungry people, or we see and that's really hard. Or we'll use the suicide example. We have, Coley and I don't know, maybe just because we're open to it, we've had a lot of people in our lives that have come into it, they've had various amounts of mental distress, like severe depression, things like that. And so suicide goes with that a lot. And, and of course people like talk to me about that. And the challenge of that is how far do you take each risk? And how many times, don't bring your COVID into here. No, I'm messing around. I'm messing around like that. Like that. I do that because everyone is trying so hard not to cough right now. So I just try to point it out right away because I think it's funny. And I'm mean like that. But so when we talk about how we see people and we don't do anything about it. And Jesus actually talks about this in Matthew chapter 25. So let's go to Matthew chapter 25, for just a hot second. I believe it's verse 31, the sheep and the goats. Yep, verse 31. So we'll read the sheep and the goats really quick. This section of Matthew is, we're getting very close to the cross, and it's getting very apocalyptic in language, and Jesus is conveying what the kingdom of God looks like and what people in that look like. So let's listen to this. Of course, it's got to download. There it goes.
When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Oh, when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Then he will also say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they also will answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison, and did not minister to you?" Then he will answer them, saying, "Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life.
Okay, so I think that talks about it as well, and you could see what Jesus is doing here is he's turning it to the positive. It's like when you have turned around and clothed people that needed clothes, when you have turned around, you have done that to me. And this kind of fits in with the stealing one too, and we'll go into that. But we can see that this is a connection there. We're kind of, and I think it goes back to what Judy said a little bit ago with how we view people, is that I think we're guilty of this when we look at someone and we go, "Yeah, they're not worth my time." You know, when we refuse to be a servant to them. And listen, I'm just as guilty.
I don't know if you saw the peanut
I
butter.
have not seen it yet. I heard it's really good.
It's a very good movie. It starts out sort of slow, but it's about an autistic person who doesn't want to be in the senior facility. He wants to be, he's young, he's 24.
Yeah.
And people call him names. You're an idiot. You're handicapped. Just nasty words. I don't remember what it was. And it really hurt him. And people don't realize that when you say that, how much it hurts people.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about with the words being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I have like that sliding scope of, I think the nasty words come from, like what you're talking about, like the need. But a lot of times our actions can be there too, with that, with when we're not doing stuff. So the way I kind of view this and the next two is that it's not so much like, oh, just don't plunge the knife into him, or don't just hate. But we see Luther in the small catechism, the way he describes it is, we should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. Like that's, and so I think we're guilty of this when we're kind of refusing to help in times too, and that's what makes it so hard, because that's me. I've said no to plenty of people, So, all right, don't commit adultery. Luther says this: we should fear and love God so that we lead a sexually pure and decent life in what we say and do, and husband and wife love and honor each other. So what I really got from this, Luther's, who's that? Oh, that's you. There's a phone going off. It's very epic music. We'll talk about stealing time here in a second. I'm messing with you. So Luther, when you read the large catechism, I encourage you to read this in the large one about the sixth commandment: do not commit adultery. His answer is weird, and I think it's one of his least helpful, because he talks a lot about the papacy, the popes, and how priests aren't married and they should be married. The whole thing is about that, and he talks a little bit about these other things, but I think the most, it's also very short. It's only like a page or two, and so I think he's kind of attacking the Catholic Church more so than we would expect it to. I don't think it translates into today as well as the other ones do. But I think the nuggets that I do get out of it that are really helpful is, do not commit adultery. It's just like murder, and then it's not about just not doing it. It's like, well, I didn't touch his wife, or something like that. I didn't do that. But it's also our thoughts, because that's what we saw Jesus said a little bit ago. It's also our thoughts. But Luther also takes it to the positive, and it's those times when we didn't help. When we belittled someone else's spouse with them or something like that, it's like, oh yeah, she's terrible, or something like that, where we didn't lift up their marriage as well. And I think that's, and the point that I kind of see throughout this whole thing is this idea of giving, of giving, where we're giving life, like that's, and where we're giving that forward from where we are. So we're giving life to people around us who, by our inaction, may die, or something like that. Or, rather than hatred, giving life in people's marriages, giving life to their marriage rather than not, rather than tearing it down. And that's, and I think that's kind of the important thing. And that's kind of what I got from his reading after you take all of the Catholic priest stuff out of it. I don't know. Do you think that's, I don't know if you remember it, you think it's a pretty good description? Like that's over there? Because
about the nuns and the Franciscan brothers and that type of person.
Yeah.
That they were just hiding away and they weren't really being fruitful.
Yeah. And
that surprised me.
Yeah, so he talked about like how they're hiding away and not being fruitful. I'll mention this just for a second because I think it actually fits well here. Someone, back early on in Christianity, there was this movement where people would show how awesome and holy they were by kind of living on on top of a pillar. So they would go up and live on top of, just like a cylinder type of thing, They'd go up and just live there, and they were just completely devoting their lives to God up there was their whole thing, and people had to throw food up to them and stuff like that. And it really came out that that stuff was actually just people's pride trying to look spiritual by what they were doing. And I think that's what Luther is trying to deal with in with the priests, that the reason why they're not getting married is that they're just trying to look better, than they are. And I think it kind of goes back to that same idea of taking God's name in vain, like taking your spiritualism in vain, and that it's not really that big of a deal. You're just using it for show. And Jesus talks about that all the time. And I think that's what's important for us to remember with our relationships and the relationships around us, that it's, our relationships aren't just a dog and pony show. Even though I kind of tell people to treat the relationship like that a little bit. In my marriage counseling, I tell people, your job above anything else is to make the other person look better than they really are, especially in public. Because I think our actions will follow. I mean, our hearts will follow our actions a lot of times. And so I think as a married couple, I think we can best live out that marriage by doing that, by working to make that person look better than they really are. So don't follow in those traps of going, oh, can you believe what Coley did? Like all that stuff. So that kind of thing. So I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but it sounds good.
Coley does a good job.
Yeah, Coley. See that? I don't know. That's the line. Like we were talking about that. All right, let's talk about don't steal for a little bit, because this one could get a little hot, and we're quickly running out of time here. Let's see. Don't steal. It's amazing where Luther goes in this book. I really encourage you to read it. This is the large catechism. Small catechism, yeah, let's read the small catechism real quick. It says this: we should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbors' money or possessions or get them in a dishonest way. That's kind of key there. But help him to improve and protect his possessions and income. And I love how Luther turns that positive, because he says, don't just take, but make sure that he's able to secure his possessions. That's help him maintain it. Because I think that's one thing that we kind of do a rotten job of. Like especially when it comes to stealing, it's like, well, like I didn't have to help them, but they lost it, like all those things like that. And Luther in here talks a lot about dishonest businesses. And you got to take it out of his time frame and put it into ours. He mainly talks about like laborers, like charging families too much money for doing some work or something like that. He mainly is talking about all that, but it's let me read this part to you. For as I just stated, it is not only when a man's strong box or his pocket are cleaned out that it is labeled as theft, but also when someone takes advantage of his neighbor in the marketplace, grocery store, butcher shop, wine or beer cellar, or workshop, in short, wherever people do business and exchange money for goods and services. Luther starts throwing a super wide net, and he starts who's seemingly unable to figure out enough ways to overcharge people who yet are careless and yet are careless and unreliable in their work. Like, so like just like sneak thieves and all that stuff, right? Yeah. I think putting inferior products in a house. I think like trying to find any little way to try to get profit out of something. You know, yeah, to increase your profit margin. That's that whole thing. And he starts kind of going big on it. And let me see if I can. Let's see, what is it? Okay, here we go. He starts talking about how there are people, and we can put this easily into our day, that just walk around as good members of society, but are just straight up thieves, but they thieve in a way that we glorify, right? So let me read this paragraph to you. In short, the way of the world is this: those who can openly steal and rob go about it freely, safe from reprimand by anyone, and even expect to be honored. Like, I think we can probably put some faces with that, right? I think you have, with the easy ones, politicians who make like little sweetheart deals for themselves on the sides, you know, who are legislating things that do well for them, you know.
Inside traders.
I think I was talking inside traders. That's a great example. Meanwhile, the little sneak thieves, whose hands on occasion have dipped into the till, must bear the disgrace and penalty of it, in order that by comparison, the others will look decent and respectable. But those others should know that before God, they are the greatest thieves of all, and that he will punish them exactly as they deserve. So think about what Luther is saying in that paragraph. He's saying that we have these laud and honored positions for these straight up thieves. You know, I'm going to talk about a few of them here in a second. Straight up thieves. But when someone who's just a little sneak thief, or the way I like to put it, someone who is hungry and is trying to just eat that day, you know, we throw them in the jail and throw them in all kinds of disgrace, right? So here's my example. I think I mentioned some of these examples in the sermon, but I own Ford stock, okay? My Ford stock went up 2 days ago. The reason why it went up is Ford announced they laid off 2,000 people. I was like, that's an example, you know? Amazon's an easy one. Did you guys hear what Amazon did to diapers.com a few years back? So diapers.com came in and had this amazing business model where it was like a subscription, but the subscription would grow with your kid. Great stuff. Parents loved it. American business, popped out of nowhere. Amazon tried to buy them. They refused to buy. They didn't want to sell out. Amazon lowered their prices to below profitability, drove them to the brink of drove diapers.com to the brink of bankruptcy, and then swooped in and bought them and raised diaper prices back up. And we bought that on Amazon. We bought the things that make us able to send video signals through the cables on Amazon. This has Amazon branding on the back of it. It's systemic. You see it? Like it's, you know, and what do we do? Like, I tried to buy stuff off of Best Buy through COVID as much as I could. Like, that's just to get away from Amazon. You know, like I buy, yeah, or in Walmart. But the thing is, I used to live in Bentonville. Like, it used to be there. Walmart is impressive and terrifying all at the same time. You know? Like, I had talk about stealing from your employees. I had a friend that got headhunted for Oracle while he was at Walmart. He's super high, basically like credit card security. Like he says, I work security for Walmart, and it makes it sound like he drives a golf cart around. But like he's the guy that makes sure they don't get hacked. And he got headhunted for Oracle. He got exactly the same amount of pay as he was getting at Walmart, but he said it was like getting a 40% raise when you counted actual time worked. Like that's they work people like crazy for that company, and they do for Amazon too. But the thing is like, what are we supposed to do about it? That's why I pointed out like all the stuff that we bought from Amazon. You know, like that's why I said it's consistent, because we laud and magnify those big things, right? We laud we love it, right? But especially when Amazon stock's doing what it's been doing, we're like, oh my goodness, I'll look away from all of the all the abuses they do to the guys picking the orders. Like you see the Amazon trucks driving through the neighborhoods. They have to make they're paid per piece when they deliver. And so they have to drive dangerously through the neighborhoods in order to be able to make a living, you know? Like, and I'm picking just on Amazon, but I think you guys can probably pick on a bunch of different stuff. And this is what Luther's talking about. Like, we will super quickly go and punish somebody for doing a pretty small crime. But, over there, you guys are fine. Yeah. Because it's like, but I'm kind of making stuff off of you too. I'm getting a tripod where if I went to a camera store, that tripod would probably be $400 or $500. On Amazon, I paid $100. You know, benefiting. And so I think when we talk about stealing, I think in today's market where we become more global than ever, when the businesses have become bigger than ever, I think what we have to do is we have to open our eyes to what's going on around us and confess that's like, okay, I'm part of this too. You know, my greed at wanting super cheap stuff is part of this too. You know, I'm part of this too. Confess it and then go, all right, receive absolution from the Lord. But when we look at it in front of us, when we look at our hatred, when we look at the adultery that's in our hearts, when we look at the theft that we are actively taking part in, we look at this and goes, all right, how am I going to deal with this today? You know, what little things do I change to deal with this? It's going to be different for each one of us. You know, it's going to be because we can't go out there in the market right now and just go, this is how I shop ethically. You know? And if you look at it like that, I need to be 100%, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. You know? Like that's that's what that's yeah, like so I think that's where when we look at our own sin, our own desire to be God, where when we are stealing from other people in ways and we're not helping other people do their thing, we're claiming to be God and going, God, I need more stuff. You didn't give me enough, you know? And I think when we get an absolution from that, we can look and go, all right, I can get better in this way here, you know? And we work towards that, you know, because it's not just 100% thing, because we won't be able to. It's so systemic in everything that we're at. And I think that's what Jesus is having us recognize, that it's so so systemic, such a deep problem in us that he went to the cross. Right? He went to the cross, and he rose again. And he comes in here, and he didn't come in and swoop in like Noah, saving everyone by destroying all the baddies and all that. Like, he comes in and he takes it upon himself. So I think the way we look at these three is that we go, all right, I'm guilty of this. I'm going to wake up today, and I'm going to look at it this way and just try to do the best I can, right? Like that's, and constantly receiving forgiveness. And then when we go that way, we can realize that the people that we may have been looking down at, to talk about what Judy said a little bit ago, those people we can look at, we can realize it's like, you're really no different than me. And we can have compassion on them. And I think we can actually get somewhere and maybe express the kingdom of God a little better here. And I think that's kind of what this is about. I don't know, I've been talking a lot because there's a lot of stuff, and we're basically done. Did anyone have any more questions or comments or anything like that?
Only that we have to leave. We got
Yeah.
other commitments, so God bless you all. Thank you all so much.
Well, I'll do the little blessing. So may God bless and keep you all, that you all would know that God loves you deeply and that he is holding you in his hands. Have a great week. Amen. All right. I don't know, did anyone else have any other things? There's the Fredericks ago. Thanks for coming today, guys.
Our pleasure.
It's good seeing you guys. Are you guys going to be here this weekend?
Yes.
Then life.
A lot of that probably sound pretty familiar. I stole a lot from the sermon this week.
Yeah, he knows.
Oh, he knows.
They're working on it.
So, I mean, is there anything else? Cheryl? Yeah.
To the commandment, do not kill.
Okay, so Cheryl was asking about soldiers. So Luther makes a big distinction. Luther makes a big distinction about activities of the state versus our activities, and so soldiers are arbiters of the state. He goes a little farther with the state stuff than I would like, but if I wrap our Americanness into that question, I think less war is always better than more war. And I think, especially when you see wars for political ends, which I think has been most of our wars here recently. Well, by recently, I mean last 50 years or so. Like that's, like these wars for political ends. I think that we should be cognizant of that. And so that's, and the way that the U.S. is set up, the government is us. And so I think we should just be a little aware of that. But Luther, he absolves a lot of the responsibility from the state because that's like a state activity. I go a little deeper than that. I still agree with that point, but that's why I could never be an elected official, because I would do things. I couldn't send anyone into war. Like that's. I couldn't do any of that. Yeah, she's saying conscientious objectors. It reminds her of that. Yeah, I know. Was there any other question? That's a good question. We had a lot of material, and I wanted to kind of get through it. So that's, yeah. They all kind of have a similar idea, and that's why we connected them, because we would have preached the same sermon 3 times if we did it. Right? It would have been a little different, but the main idea would have been the same. And so that's why we connected them. So, yeah. So if there's nothing else, like It's great seeing everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Midge and Ed.
Good.